I'm going to make a short presentation on diabetes and COVID. What is the connection? Because we've been getting some recent recommendations from the Lancet and others about treatment. And so I'll take through a very brief presentation. The first question is, are people with diabetes more likely to get COVID-19? Now, this is a contentious issue because there are people who say if people with diabetes can get all infections, why can't they get COVID-19? And that's a very valid point. But there's really been no evidence to show that if a person with diabetes sitting at home, a COVID finds this person like a drone, or develops an infection like, say, a urinary infection or something else, which comes even if you just sit at home, uncontrolled diabetes, you'll get it. So it's very unlikely. But then if your diabetes is uncontrolled, then you're more likely to get it. But the problem with people with diabetes is that worse outcomes occur. And the simplest example, laymanish example I give is that COVID is like a fire. It just spreads. Now, if you have a matchbox with you and you have got a bad habit of opening the matchbox and then lighting the fire and then simply putting it on the ground, nothing will happen. It will die down, but it's very unlikely that that match will do anything. But if heaven forbid, if there's something flammable, inflammable there's petrol there or kerosene there or paper there or something else, then that same matchstick can just blow the whole house out of proportion. The whole house can be burned down. So diabetes is like that. Once you get it, it kind of spreads because of the COVID storm and other things, which I won't go into. So the question, are they more likely to develop severe forms of COVID or get severe outcomes? Yes, but again, there's a rider if the diabetes is uncontrolled, because I believe that if your diabetes is very well controlled, A1C below 7%, you have comorbid condition which are under good control, you're like anyone else, because the infection, your immunity level is almost at the same level as a general population. So if there's one take-home message from this for all people with diabetes is control your diabetes well. You can't do anything about your age, you can't do anything about other things, but diabetes you can definitely look after. Because age and diabetes itself, there is it's a confounder, because the higher the age group, it's a non-modifiable risk factor, and therefore you get a lot of type 2 diabetes. So older people have to be even more careful. All the precautions that Dr. Praveen Chandra just now said should be taken meticulously with people with diabetes. What are the potential mechanisms by which diabetes can increase the risk? Older age, I already mentioned, but also the comorbidities. If you have heart disease, hypertension, these are independent risk factors. If you have diabetes, old age, hypertension, heart disease, you're increasing your risk all the more. Yesterday, I was talking to one of my patients and doing telemedicine with him. On top of all this, the guy smokes also. So I said, you're really asking for trouble. I can't stop, doctor. And then I said, okay, then if you don't mind dying of COVID, then don't worry about it. But otherwise, if you're really concerned about your family, he's only in his 50s. I said, you should, this is the time to change things. And then, of course, hyperglycemia itself is a growth medium. There are also immunological factors. We know that people with diabetes have higher affinity to and cellular binding, efficient virus entry. Once a virus gets in, it doesn't get cleared out. And then there's diminished T cell function, which is there. And then your innate immunity itself is reduced. And then there's an increased susceptibility to hyperinflammation. This is what I meant by the matchstick example. Once it comes in there, uncontrolled diabetes, a cytokine storm is released. And that's what leads to thrombosis and many other things that we are seeing people die of. Now, what is the evidence that severe and non-severe diabetes with COVID in patients with diabetes differ? These are about 6 or 7 studies. Dr. A.K. Singh, my colleague from Calcutta, put this together. And these are about 6 or 7 studies. And this is in this is in severe cases and non-severe cases. If you look at the diabetes prevalence, in the severe cases, it is like 3 times or 4 times higher than in the non-severe cases, just showing that it's a reverse causality. It's not a severe COVID, it's produced the diabetes, but although that also has now come up that COVID can produce stress hyperglycemia, COVID can produce direct beta cell injury and produce diabetes. I'll talk about that. But this is the other way around. Severe uncontrolled diabetes leading to severe COVID. Now, if you look at survivor, non-survivor, same story. All studies showing the same thing. You take survivors and non-survivors. It's not that the non-survivors, the prevalence of diabetes was higher. It's just that because of the uncontrolled diabetes, they died. So if you look at any death series, you'll find a lot of diabetes there. This morning, the health minister of Tamil Nadu put out all the causes of death and comorbidity. There was a very good article where he says 82% of all the deaths in Tamil Nadu, they've done an analysis, 82% had either diabetes or hypertension or COPD or something. Only 18% did not have comorbidities. So it's very clear that the low death rates in India, we are very lucky that in India the death rates are very low. But even within that low death rate, it is people with these uncontrolled comorbidities who seem to be getting it. This, of course, came out early from studies from Wuhan. If you look at the case fatality, 2.3%. With age, it goes up below 9%. There was no deaths, although later I think 1 or 2 were reported. But as you go up, say above 18 years, almost 80 years, almost 15% deaths. Look at diabetes, 7.3%. Now, these rates have been revised just yesterday by CDC. Now, the WHO said that about 3 to 4% of people die. CDC has today given a statement saying that only 0.2 to 0.3% of the infected cases died. So if you talk about 0.2 to 0.3% dying, this is overall, not India, overall. So 0.2 to 0.3%. And we still know that many are asymptomatic. So the actual death rates are very low. What we are seeing is the tip of the iceberg. What we're seeing here, after they die, we say, oh, they had diabetes, they had this, they had that. There are many who are asymptomatic and are going away. And this is one message you should tell people, don't get scared. Because every time you tell a person with diabetes and hypertension, we have 70 million people with diabetes in India, and quite a few million in Tamil Nadu itself. There have been like 100 deaths in Tamil Nadu, of which about 50 people had diabetes. So I said 50 people die every hour and due to other causes, not due to COVID. I'm sure heart disease and other things kill much more people. So we shouldn't lose track of non-COVID causes. That is one of the things I would like to very strongly say. I'm not going to go into this. I think Dr. Praveen Chandra has already talked about this, the cytokine storm, which is actually responsible for not only pulmonary, but also cardiac, acute renal injuries, and the thrombosis and so on. So the next question is, are people with type 1 diabetes also more prone or carry worse prognosis? Just about a few weeks ago, when I was with Dr. Agarwal on another webinar on this, I gave this answer, saying that there's very little data to support this. I haven't changed my slide, but I think now I have changed it. A very recent study from UK, just 4 or 5 days ago, 1 week ago exactly, which showed that the death rates are higher in type 1 diabetic patients than type 2. I find this very difficult to believe because these are young people. The people are 20 years old and 30 years old. And Germany didn't see this, US didn't see this, and Italy didn't see it, Spain didn't see it, in India we haven't seen it. So far, one of my type 1s has developed, and it's so rare. And one of my patients developed, he recovered fine without any problem. But in the UK, they're saying that if you age adjust, gender adjust, and then look at it, the death rates are actually higher in patients with type 1 than in type 2. And it's a very large study. It's a whole nationwide study in the UK. So every day we're learning new things about COVID. Every time we think we know something, we really don't know anything. So there's a lot of unknowns as far as COVID is concerned. So the problem is that treat every diabetic patient as if they carry worse prognosis. That will be my advice. What should people with diabetes do to prevent COVID-19? First of all, let's tell patients not to panic. I've had many patients who have called me and said, Doc, I've written my will. That's my end. You're not going to see me again. I said, of course, I'm going to see you. I'm going to see you and you'll see my child also. And you'll probably see my grandson also. So don't worry about it. That's the first thing to tell them, because the moment they read in the papers, above 60, diabetes, this, death, how many people have died? Like 40 people died in Tamil Nadu. What? Let's not, even go there, So nothing is going to happen. You practice the principles even more strongly because you have diabetes. Social distancing, physical distancing, hand washing, wearing the mask. And we saw all those masks which Dr. Praveen Chandra showed. Good respiratory etiquette. These are very, very, very important. But these are very general. So what extra precautions should people with diabetes take? Control diabetes well. Can say that 100 times. Check sugars often to ensure good control. We found two things. There are many patients who have started checking many more. And in a study which I've just done, it's under publication. It's just been accepted publication in International Journal. We contacted 2,500 of our patients and asked them various things, what they did during lockdown. Surprise, surprise. Actually, they did better. Many of them, their A1C actually came down from 8.2 mean to 7.7. That's because there's no stress. They were eating better. They were sleeping better. They didn't have the tension of work. There's no pollution. They didn't have deadlines to meet. they're working from home. So they actually, many of them did better. I'm sure Dr. Praveen Chandra and Dr. Agarwal will say that maybe the heart attacks also came down. That's what I'm hearing all the while. So there are certain good things also which happen if you look after well. On the other hand, if you neglect everything, then you're asking for trouble, like my friend who was smoking the other day. So eating healthy includes more vegetables, fruit, and protein. These are the three things which are going to build immunity, no doubt about it. That if you take more B12, more iron, more fruit with antioxidants, vitamin C, zinc, and protein, this is going to build your muscle, this is going to build your immunity, and you're going to get stronger, and therefore you can survive. We showed about 2 years ago in the Pure study, Salim Yusuf's Pure study, that the grip strength, just the grip strength, will determine how long you live. Those are the poor grip strength, frail people. They tend to die. So such a simple thing like a dynamometer, grip dynamometer, will tell you about your survival. So that's why the protein and the exercise comes in. Of course, pranayama, Dr. Agarwal is an expert in that. Last time we spent a lot of time talking about it. Not only it improves lung function, which is very important, oxygenation, it decreases stress. And stress and anxiety, depression are one of the big things to reduce your immunity and to make you at higher risk. So I would advocate everybody doing pranayama, and if you can do the rest of the yoga and meditation, that is also great. So good nutrition practice will include eating well, eating slowly, eat on time. That's very important. I think that's why my patients improved. Now they're all able to eat on time. Otherwise their lunch was at 2:30, 3, 4. Now 1 o'clock, they're all at home and they're able to have their lunch. Eating right. They were able to get fruits, vegetables. I thought that the grocery stores were all closed, but the majority of them said, well, we stocked up, we got it, we were able to do it. And then having a more complete balanced nutrition, because so much of things they're hearing on television and social media that they've actually improved their diet. Now, there are certain things we cannot change when you talk about immune function. Things like early life events, genetics, gender, age, hormonal status. These things we cannot, or exposure to pathogen. These we cannot change. But look at these. The nutrient status, diet, gut flora, obesity, smoking. Again, smoking comes up here. Alcohol smoking. Now, one of the reasons why people probably improved was they couldn't get alcohol. You saw the queues after in the Tasmak shops and others after they opened. There was no alcohol, no smoking. So that's one of the reasons why probably people improved. One of the reasons why probably the diabetes and heart disease and all that came down during this time. Exercise was problem during lockdown. It is an issue. Many people could not exercise at home. Even not everybody has a treadmill and so on. But it is one way to improve your nutrition. And of course, reducing your stress. Vaccination. We cannot vaccinate against COVID yet, but we can still vaccinate against pneumococcal, against influenza, and hope that some of that spills over. At least we get a secondary infection. Mixed infections are being reported. H1N1 and COVID, both occurring together. So those kind of things can be avoided. Can all anti-diabetic drugs be continued? If there are no or mild symptoms, 80%, today's Tamil Nadu statistics says 86% of patients are asymptomatic. If you're asymptomatic, so what? You just continue what you're doing. Life goes on as usual. But if you have severe COVID, you have to be admitted to hospital. Stop many drugs. Metformin probably should be stopped. SGLT2 definitely to be stopped. And then to prevent dehydration. Sugars are high, start insulin. Okay, with insulin has some anti-inflammatory effects. Quickly running through the slides. Metformin, the jury is divided. It has anti-proliferative immunomodulatory effects, but then there's a risk of lactic acidosis and mild dehydration, and it has decreased the role in pneumonia mortality has been shown, and therefore we don't know. But if the diabetes is mild, continue metformin, safe drug. Otherwise, it's okay. TZDs, I'm not a big fan of TZDs. I think we should actually stop TZDs because there is, it is known to increase ACE2 expression. It will definitely increase fluid overload. It will increase your weight. And there are other side effects associated with this. So this is a very good drug to take. GLP-1, there has been some evidence that it increases the ACE2 expression in the lungs. We don't know, but these two probably can better be stopped. DPP-4 inhibitors, there is actually some evidence that it may be helpful. There are a couple of reports which have been shown. In MERS, for example, reduced viral entry has been shown. And many people are saying that perhaps, again, there are some people who say, no, it's actually bad during this and so on. Okay, but there are some people who believe it can decrease the risk of COVID-19. I don't know, but it's a very simple, gentle drug. If you're taking it, sugar is controlled, you take it. SGLT2, I said, in severe cases, stop. Euglycemic ketosis, risk of dehydration. Sulfonylureas insulin, no harm in taking it, but the dose will have to be adjusted. So in hospitalized patients, especially in ICU, better to be on insulin. Not better, you have to be on insulin. IV insulin infusion, frequent blood glucose monitoring every hour or two. Other methods of giving insulin, multiple short-acting insulin, insulin analogs, especially in ketoacidosis, single basal insulin, insulin pump, and so on have also been used in advanced centers. Therapeutic goals between 70 to 180. You can even raise that to 110, 120 and take that up to 200 if you like in sick patients. These are in normal patients. A1C below 7 we should aim for. This new thing about time in range, it's not range, it's in range. TIR, this is after doing ambulatory glucose profile. So if you do the continuous glucose monitoring, 70% of the day you should be under control. Avoid hypoglycemia. We don't want you to go into hypoglycemia and trigger an arrhythmia or something. And that's where the SMBG and CGM will come into effect. We found that the use of SMBG actually went up during the lockdown period. From 28% of people who were testing, it went up to 50%. 50% are still not testing, but at least that was good. Insulin resistance has been recently reported. So some centers are saying that they need tremendous insulin requirement. In the new COVID cases admitted, they need 200 units, 300 units, 400 units. What is the mechanism? We don't know. Something it seems to do to block the insulin. Increase in DKA has been reported from ketoacidosis has been reported in some centers. Can COVID precipitate new onset diabetes? Whenever we've had an emergency, whether it's a tsunami, whether it is an earthquake, whether something, we have seen diabetes go up. Why? Stress, anxiety, depression, because that's one of the counter regulatory hormones keep going up. Your cortisol goes up, your growth hormone goes up, everything goes up, it blocks your insulin. So that is one. Apart from that, irregular lifestyle, unhealthy diet, some people said we couldn't get fruits, we couldn't get vegetables, physical exercise went down in some people. So it can precipitate in a pre-diabetic suddenly. And stress, of course, very important factor. Direct viral damage to pancreatic beta cells has been shown in some experimental models. In humans, few case reports are coming in. We'll have to wait until we really know that. Is there a COVID-19 diabetes, new onset diabetes? Possible. We don't know. So these are my summary of recommendations actually adapted from a Lancet article, slightly modified. In outpatient diabetes care, sensitization of patients regarding better metabolic control. I would like to go on top of a mountain and take a loudspeaker and say, control diabetes well, control diabetes well. That's the only thing we can do. We cannot do anything else. And I think we cannot shout enough. We must keep on doing this. Optimization of current therapies. If you are not under good control, this is the time, is an excuse or a motivation for you to control, not to discontinue treatment. Lot of diabetic patients discontinue treatment. They read all about alternative treatment, this one, that one, reversal of diabetes. All quacks go on social media and tell them in one day I can cure your diabetes, and they discontinue treatment. This is not a time to discontinue treatment. Better attention to diet, exercise, stress reduction, yoga, meditation, pranayama. Again and again, back to that. Use of telemedicine, which has been there. Now it's slowly going down. We start opening our clinics. People don't like that all that much. It's good when nothing else is available, but they want that personal touch. Inpatient diabetes care, plasma glucose monitoring, maintaining ketones, pH, fluid balance, insulin dose adjustment. Watch for and treat complications, including thrombosis. You should be looking out for these rare things. So I'm going to stop here. I just wanted to tell you that for those who want to learn more about diabetes and COVID, I made a lot of videos, also a few videos about immunity, vitamin D, each thing that people ask about, vitamin C, all these things I made short videos. They are available on YouTube. And if you just put Dr. V. Mohan, you'll get them. It's free. And so anybody who's interested to learn more about it can do that. So I'm going to stop here and we will hand over to Dr. K.K. Agarwal. Thank you, sir.